This is the proudest moment of Chris Iwelumo's career. Ever since he had first had a ball at his feet, he had dreamt of donning the dark blue of his country. Now, at the age of 30, in the 56th minute of a crunch World Cup qualifier, Chris has to dream no longer. Scotland manager George Burley has overlooked more experienced striking options and turned to the imposing 6'3" hitman Iwelumo to dig him out of a hole. Now he has the opportunity to bring to life a fantasy scenario acted out in playgrounds up and down the country and score the goal that could help send Scotland to a major tournament. 5 minutes after setting foot on the hallowed Hampden turf, and Iwelumo's dream day would turn into a nightmare, and he would be wishing the ground would open up and swallow him. For Chris, it is a debut that would have felt a million miles away when he was left out over and over again for his primary school team. According to medical professionals, it is a debut that should never have happened. At the age of 18, Iwelumo suffered a horror knee injury while playing for St Mirren. He required surgery, and after the operation, doctors informed him that the chances he would be playing past the age of 26 were virtually none. But you cannot say that Iwelumo had not deserved his call-up to the Scotland squad. Born in Coatbridge to a Scottish mother and Nigerian father, he moved to the village of Kilmores near Kilmarnock at the age of 3. Despite harbouring aspirations of being a PE teacher, St Mirren manager Jimmy Bone offered him a professional contract at 18. After scoring 3 goals in 39 appearances across 3 seasons for the Buddies, Iwelumo went on a nomadic journey, mainly through the lower levels of the footballing pyramid. He spent a couple of unsuccessful years in Denmark with Aarhus Fremad. Following his release, he had trials at Celtic and Preston North End, but neither decided to sign him. Stoke City, however, did take him on. In 5 seasons there, he scored 22 goals and 103 appearances in all competitions. His best year was the 01-02 campaign, when he scored 10 goals in League One. This was by far the most prolific season of his career, as he had never managed to bag more than 4 league goals before then. In his 5 seasons at Stoke, he was also sent on 3 loans, with the most memorable one coming at the end of his time there in 2004, when he won the penalty which would secure Brighton's promotion to the Championship. He then again tried his luck on foreign shores, spending a season with Alemannia Aachen in the Bundesliga 2. It was not a happy time, and he failed to find the back of the net. It is quite ironic that back when he was 18, Chris was told that he wouldn't play past the age of 27, because it was after turning 27 that Iwelumo finally started to catch fire. Following that disastrous spell in Germany, he joined Colchester United and tore it up in League One, banging in 17 goals, which were instrumental in the club getting promoted to the Championship. Moving up a level did not slow Chris down, as he went one better, scoring 18 goals and helping to achieve a best ever 10th place finish in the league. Rejecting a new contract at Colchester, he joined Charlton on a free and scored 10 goals in the Championship. Charlton were looking to slash their wage bill, so Iwelumo left and signed for Wolves. Scoring 8 goals in his first 8 appearances landed him on the radar of Scotland boss George Burley. Burley was in serious need of help. Appointed in 2008, Burley failed to win the trust of the players, press or fans after he could not guide his team to a win in the first 3 friendlies of his reign. Pressure, criticism and questions about his suitability for the role were piled on him after Scotland put in an abject performance and were defeated 1-0 by Macedonia. Some in the press declared Scotland's bid to reach South Africa as all but over after just 1 game. A red card for skipper Stephen McManus when Scotland were heading for a 2-0 win over Iceland on matchday 2 left them hanging on for dear life in the final 10 minutes as they desperately clung to a 2-1 win in Reykjavik. To be fair to Burley, he was having a bit of a nightmare with playing personnel. Lee McCulloch had decided to retire from international duty before the Iceland match, citing a wish to focus on his club career. There was much speculation that not wanting to work under George Burley was the real reason the Scotland midfielder had packed it in. This was later confirmed to be true, as McCulloch returned to the Scotland setup under Craig Levein and slammed Burley's chaotic regime in a 2013 interview. Then there were the injuries. Alan Hatton and Barry Ferguson were the most high profile of a long list of crocked players that had decimated Burley's squad. In both the opening 2 matches, Burley had gone for James McFadden up front. He was partnered with Kenny Miller against Macedonia and trusted as the lone striker in Reykjavik. With Miller picking up a knock that ruled him out of the 3rd qualifier, Burley was in need of reinforcements. And this is how, at the ripe old age of 30, Chris Iwelumo was in line to make his Scotland debut against Norway at Hampden. Iwelumo had actually been called up to the national team before, with Bertie Vogts requesting his presence for a tour of South Korea in 2002. He probably should have made his debut then, but was forced to withdraw to help Stoke, who were competing in the playoffs. Chris had been worried that the 3-match ban he was serving for a controversial red card would blow his last chance at representing his country. As far as Burley was concerned though, Iwelumo had more than earned his spot, and said this to the press: "You are looking for players in form, players who are playing regularly. Chris comes into that category. This season, under Mick McCarthy, he has added being a target player and added goals. Group 9 was finally poised heading into the match. Holland, Macedonia and Scotland were all sitting on 3 points. Scotland simply had to win to keep their hopes of reaching a first World Cup in 12 years alive. Scotland started the match in a 4-3-3 attacking formation. With Chris Commons injured, James Morrison made his competitive debut and Barry Robson got pushed out wide to the right. Scotland began brightly, looking especially threatening down the left through Sean Maloney and Morrison. Burley's pass and create strategy, which looked to build through the midfield rather than bypass it, was undone by Scotland's sloppiness on the ball. They relinquished possession too often and allowed Norway on the front foot. The pace and power of Jean Carew was causing chaos. Scotland did manage to fashion another couple of half chances, with the best one falling to James Morrison on the stroke of half time.
This will be a good time to score. McFadden got his cross in too, and Morrison pops his header over. Big chance for Scotland on the stroke of half-time.
With the pattern of the second half looking set to mirror the first, the proactive Burley went to his bench early and decided to shuffle the deck in the 57th minute. Burley made the bold move of choosing not to bring someone on to support the isolated James McFadden, but to take the fan favourite off instead. Even more questions were asked when it became clear who his replacement was to be. As Burley had so often done during his reign, he overlooked Chris Boyd. The 25-year-old Rangers striker had scored 7 in his 15 Scotland caps, more or less a goal every 2 games, and the Tartan Army were desperate to see him come on. In addition to the commands given to him by Burley and the coaching staff, Iwelumo had been given 2 simple instructions by his 3-year-old daughter before the match: kick the ball and score a goal. With Iwelumo providing a focal point up top, Scotland improved and looked more of a threat. With just over 5 minutes of Big Chris being on the pitch, Scotland put together their best move of the game. Scott Brown did well to evade 2 defenders out on the wing and find Gary Naismith, who took a touch towards the byline before playing a perfect ball over to Iwelumo, who had gotten himself gloriously free 3 yards in front of a gaping open goal. The Hampden crowd erupted. Ceilings in pubs the length and breadth of the country were decorated with a fresh coating of tenants. Jubilation gripped the nation. The ecstasy lasted a matter of seconds. The realisation dawned on everyone. Rather than taking a small step to set himself for a tap-in, Iwelumo's awkwardly large stride meant his body position was all wrong, and the ball bounced off his standing leg and ballooned agonisingly past the post. Disbelief gripped the nation. It is a moment that every Scotland fan will remember where they were. Internally, Iwelumo was asking the same question that everyone else in the country was: how have I missed that?
How did he miss?
Jogging shell-shocked around the pitch, he was also wondering whether this horror moment would be the one that would define his career. But there was still 25 minutes of a monumental match left to play. Chris had to put it behind him for the time being and fight for his country. And to be fair to him, despite the miss inexplicably being replayed in numerous times on the big screen, he held it together. The Tartan Army rallied behind him and he actually played quite well, offering something different, and Scotland were much improved with him on the pitch. In the dying seconds of the game, Fletcher and Iwelumo were inches away from changing the narrative of the post-match inquest.
Desperately, here's Broadfoot though across. Oh, no one can get a touch. Agonisingly close. Oh, if only Fletcher or Iwelumo could have got a touch on that, Scotland would be looking at 3 points instead of staring at 1.
As it was, Chris Iwelumo and his disastrous debut were all anyone could talk about. Croc skipper Barry Ferguson and the head media officer came to Chris and offered to sneak him out a secret exit, thus avoiding the press. Iwelumo refused, naively perhaps expecting the media walk would take no more than 15 minutes. Iwelumo was there for nearly 2 hours as the frenzied press revelled in the autopsy of the worst miss-sitter in football history. For almost a month after, Iwelumo was eviscerated in the Scottish media, although he did have Chris Boyd to thank for making sure that not every available backpage column inch was dedicated to Iwelumo's hapless Hampden horror show. Hours after watching the man Burley had preferred over him fluff his lines in the most epic fashion possible, Boyd left a message on the Scotland gaffer's phone, informing him he would not play for Scotland again while he was still in charge. A public war of words between the pair did help distract a little from Iwelumo. Besides, as he played played in England, he was able to escape the majority of the bad press down south. But one thing he could not run away from was himself. Having recorded the match on Sky Plus, Iwelumo tortured himself for days on end, watching the miss over and over and over again, wishing that he'd done it all differently and had been hailed as a hero, but we cannot change the past. Chris's wife knew this, and after 4 days and presumably hundreds of viewings, she made him delete the clip from the telly. Despite receiving messages of support from friends and acquaintances in the football world, Iwelumo was dreading facing his teammates as he trudged back into training at Wolves. Wolves manager Mick McCarthy is someone who believes that humour and laughter are the best remedies when life deals us a bad hand, and he did a great job putting Chris Iwelumo back together again after being dismantled by the miss. Knowing that Iwelumo would be embarrassed, McCarthy got the whole team together in front of the goal and simulated Chris's big chance at Hampden, seeing which one of them could miss it. Allowing himself a chuckle at his own expense, Iwelumo threw himself back into his football. He went on a tear and scored 7 goals in 11 games for Wolves before having to endure a brutal 16-match goal drought. It was inconsequential to the team though, as Wolves won the title and promotion back to the Premier League. Iwelumo left Wolves in 2010 after failing to score in 15 appearances in England's top flight. He made one more appearance for Scotland under Burley in a friendly against Argentina, but did not feature again in the World Cup qualifiers as Burley was sacked in 2009. He would make 2 more short cameo appearances for Scotland in 2010 under Craig Levein, failing to score. After leaving Watford, Iwelumo turned out for 8 clubs in the next 4 seasons, ending his career on a high in Scotland, winning the Scottish Cup with St Johnstone. Iwelumo's miss haunted him for a long time, and even to this day he says it makes him sick to his stomach whenever he remembers it, and he has been reminded of it often. After the fact, he was immediately added to compilations of the worst misses of all time, alongside the likes of Ronnie Rosenthal, Nkwano Kanu, Diego Forlan, Peter Van Vossen and Freddie Ljungberg. Anytime someone like Fernando Torres or Jacob Blaszczykowski deigns to miss an open goal, Iwelumo will see his lapse of concentration reappear on Twitter, and his name will once more be placed toward the top of lists and new articles comparing it to the latest howler. I think the whole context surrounding it, the fact it was his debut, the fact it was for his country, the fact he was nearing the end of his career, and all the nonsense surrounding Burley and Boyd made this a miss that stuck to Chris more than most. He was a centimetre away from being a national hero and ended up being the butt of jokes countrywide. Indeed, when he returned to Wolves in 2015 as an under-18s coach, Birmingham Live published an article debating where Iwelumo's sitter belongs amongst others in the annals of history. In recent times, Chris has tried to change the narrative by claiming that nowadays it would have been chalked off for offside. I understand why he would want to deflect in this way, and it was indeed very tight, but in football you were taught from the start to play to the whistle, and the linesman was running up to the centre circle for the restart. He thought he had scored. Personally, having watched it many times, I think he was fractionally onside, but despite all of this, I have nothing but respect for how Iwelumo has handled the situation. Personally, I never would have left the house again. Iwelumo, however, is made of stronger stuff than I, and refused to let a momentary lapse of concentration define the rest of his career. He hung pictures of the miss in his home gym to remind him that whatever life decides to throw at him, he will overcome through strength, hard work and dedication. After retiring, he initially looked at getting into coaching, before deciding it wasn't for him. Pursuing a career in media, he challenged himself by going back to university and getting a degree in journalism. He is now a well-respected pundit and runs a successful property business on the side. As the man himself said, that miss against Norway was a low, which ultimately, I like to think, represented a bump in the road of an otherwise successful journey through professional football, lasting over 2 decades, representing my country, enjoying 5 promotions and collecting 2 cup winners' medals. You cannot dwell too much on any single moment, because it will impact upon the next performance. The highs are to be celebrated, but like the lows, are also to be learned from.
The boy from Cockbridge has put Scotland in front.
The policeman went at him.
He's missed it.
He missed. Oh my God!
I don't believe it.
He missed that. You're having a laugh.
What happened there?
He missed that.